Welcome to the Friday Council, a podcast exploring modern life and the human condition. Join us each week for a new conversation. This is the Friday Council. Welcome back to the Friday Council podcast. Today is episode 35. Daniel, how are we doing today?
Great, lovely.
Nice.
Can't wait for the weekend and get cancelled
J-Day.
right now.
David?
And J-Day tomorrow.
Yeah, not too bad. Hasn't been my best day ever, but hasn't been my worst day ever.
Fair
either.
enough.
That's good. That's honest.
Yes.
Today.
Had some self-doubts today, but I'm powering through
Powering
it.
through it. Hopefully this will help. Take your mind off
Yeah,
or
I'm feeling
inspire.
better already, so yeah.
Today,
Today.
talking about the P word, we're going to talk about pornography. Pornography. What comes to mind straight away when you hear the word pornography?
Devon Lee.
Start with you, David.
Devon Lee.
Who's that? Am I supposed to know? Is that a P star?
It's my first true love porn star.
Right. I mean, look, there's going to be a lot of memes. Like,
Milf.
it sounds like
Yes.
memes, but it's a serious topic. But
Yeah,
we can all
so,
relate.
yeah,
we
we-
can all relate.
Yeah,
Guys,
we
especially.
keep it somewhat humorous as much as we can have the serious talk as well. But yeah, she stands out to me. That would be the first thing that pops up. Vividly
Okay.
remember, I think may not have been officially the first porn video I watched, but it's the one that's most prominent as Nav will remember because we were watching it on a PSP at school.
See, classic memory.
Yes.
What about you, Nev? Pornography.
Entertainment, I guess.
Hmm.
That's probably one thing I think about. Like, I don't know. There's so much. It's a big stigma topic, but it's like how would you explain it? It's like pornography as a nucleus. There's so much like outer to the core.
Yep.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
I don't know if that's
'Cause it's-
a good way
yeah,
to explain
yeah,
it.
It's got to be because it's so base. It's so
Yeah.
base in us, and it drives a lot of our life. If death drives a lot of our life, then porn, which is related to like sex, I guess, is like
Well,
kind
yeah.
of
Sex is
continuing
like-
of life
Secondary to
death.
yeah, it's kind
Yeah,
of like
it's
the
probably number
most
2.
prominent thing. Like if you think everyone, well, unless you're asexual like Mo,
Yeah.
yeah,
Shout
everyone
out, Mo.
Everyone has, sexual energy is kind of the most intense energy other than probably meth.
Deep. Yeah. Honestly.
It's because we've talked about this before. Like as a male, when you, get super horny, I've heard Joe Rogan. Lots of people talk about it. Like your judgment gets clouded. You might go out and do something you regret when you're super horny, and then if you jack off, you reset, and then you can go about daily
Not
life.
necessarily have to jack off. You have sex.
Yes,
too.
but that's what I'm saying is, if you don't jack off, you might go out and have sex and not wear a condom,
Well,
and then it gets messy.
Yeah, well, that's one of the. Might as well jump straight into that topic.
Cool.
First, before we do that, just as a stat to hit you with a stat, it's estimated, apparently, supposedly, 91.5% of men and 60% of women, which is probably more than we might have assumed, consume porn.
I would have thought that that's a low estimate for women.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
because I know there's
Well,
that like reputation that women don't watch porn, but I mean, not every girl that I've talked to has watched porn, but most of them have been pretty. I'd say like a small sample size, but I'd say it'll be more like 80%.
It's more than
Can
I
you,
thought. Anyway.
Sorry, repeat that number. I just got sidetracked by the cat.
91.5. So 92% of men and 60.2% of women
Okay.
consume. So like a lot. Most people.
I guess
Most
probably
people.
depends on I don't know why is that across like the
I think it's
whole
across all.
Yeah, maybe older women watch less than older men.
I assume so.
Because I feel like, I'm talking like young women, teenagers, 16 to our age now, 30. I feel like that group would be like 80%. But
Yeah, possibly. But that brings to mind just the expansive nature of porn. It's permeated everywhere, obviously. I mean, our age, it was already plentiful online, and it seems to have become even more so.
if you think like the free like porn sites that are around now, even like Pornhub, it's such like a refined user experience.
Yeah,
It's almost like a YouTube algorithm.
Exactly, and everything works. Everything's generally high quality. I remember back in the day, it used to be a real pain navigating those sites that had lots of X's in the name. They were always terrible. There was pop-ups and things wouldn't load.
It is kind of like it's pretty low. We admit like the sex drive is real low deep down, and so oftentimes the content itself is like with the videos with lots of X's. It's like real. It's when everyone knows that's stupid. Like it's just a cheap advertising like thing, but it just like draws. It's like triple X.
I was gonna say, what if you want to watch the Triple X movie, but
yeah. Imagine,
drink quadruple X beer.
There must have been some slip ups there.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you guys think? What do you think about the children? Honestly, like, I personally, I feel like our school system in New Zealand massively failed us, in that we had, like, I think what was the extent? Oh, porn is the extent of you said.
We had CFLE at primary school by a woman who I would describe as, I don't know what to describe her, not someone who should be talking about sex.
She was probably like mid-50s to 60s.
And not only that, but she was like weird. She seemed like the sort of person who's probably not having sex with her husband. Like,
yeah.
She just was off.
That's
not the sort
similar,
of person.
like similar vibe, like old, like the last
Fogey.
old lady teaching us not about porn. It was like 10 minutes. I barely remember it, and I just think it was such a letdown.
Yeah.
Personally, I think of porn as a drug, and it's been real helpful for me to think like that. And with growing up in school, everyone knows kids are consuming it, especially at high school, especially by the time you get to high school. I don't remember anything at my high school about it. And I feel like my brain is, the research suggests that my brain, the amount that I consume.
It's where it gets messy when you go to, in our case, a Catholic school, and there's sort of these hard boundaries about, you can't go too deep into these conversations, even though they should be coming from, even if they're against these things, they should be still educating you about it. But it's like, we don't really talk about that because we're Catholic and have strict rules.
I think probably you guys might be the same, and throughout high school would have been considered a heavy user.
Yes,
that's for sure. And I just didn't think anything of it.
No,
I knew alcohol was a drug, and you do that for a reason. And I knew like marijuana was a drug, but it affects your brain just like a drug. And I feel like my brain and our brains probably are irreversibly changed because of that.
Yeah.
Like while we were young, heaps of porn.
I think
a lot of guys can relate to
that.
But
to look back on that, a lot of that is driven by the fact that we would all have been going through puberty.
Mm-hmm. Super.
And so it's very easy to say, you're a horny teenager. What do you kind of like, what's the outlet? So you end up just turning towards the easiest way.
As I say, yes, you can make these negative arguments against porn and they're somewhat valid. You can also make the positive arguments. Better that you're at home jacking off with your undies around your ankles than you actually go out and rape someone because you're a piece of shit who can't have sex with a woman or attract a woman. It's better that you do that, right? So it's better actually, there's probably a small percentage of males who are unfuckable, to be brash, that watch porn and then don't go out and do a rape because...
a rape.
That's a valid argument that they use. It's like it's an outlet. Yeah.
So just as you can obviously make the counter argument that there'll be a percentage of males who watch it and it warps them, like Ted Bundy. Well, that could be a convenient. I always think that could be a convenient excuse. In his case, he was try and justify why he was a serial killer, and he blamed it all on porn from a young age. Probably some truth to it, but it can also be a cope as well. To be like, it wasn't my fault. It was porn that brainwashed me.
Yeah.
So,
I suppose thinking about it again like a drug, and anyone can blame a drug for their behaviour.
Yeah, or a drug is not. Yeah, you can look at it like that. Or as I prefer a tool. It's a tool, and they can, in a similar way to like the way you're referring to it as a drug. Yes, I think. Everything is a drug, essentially. Video games are a drug. But I think it's more appropriate to call them tools. Even though, yes, you're right, because anything that's changing your neurochemistry is essentially a drug, isn't it? So video game, So drug. It's not a wrong term. I say it just sounds more professional calling it a tool to me. But anything is a tool. Anything that changes your brain, which is basically everything, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
Sleep is a drug.
Yeah, I think the is it a vent argument? I just think we mentioned if death is like the number one thing that drives us,
Mm-hmm.
sexual energy and sex is probably number two, or
Has
at
to
least
be.
way up there.
Arguably the first, because if you think, I mean, it's essentially the only purpose. Well, you can make arguments, but it's kind of the key purpose of all humans, all living things, is to recreate, isn't it? So you can almost argue.
Supposedly.
You can almost argue that it's. But yeah, they're one and two
Yeah.
very close together.
I just wanted to say the energy, the drive that especially
Savage.
teenage boys have to like that sexual energy,
Yeah.
and using porn as a vent. I'm not so sure that it's so like binary that it can be used. So for someone who's gonna commit a rape or something horrific, then can watch porn and that same energy is just dissipated. I think there's more options than that. You can put that energy into many things, and I think relating it back to schooling, if I was just told about the pros and cons of it, what it does to my brain, like I was aware at least that like cannabis did something to your brain, so I'm going to be a bit more like hesitant and thoughtful about it. It's like, I watch TV all the time. It's just a screen. It's just TV. I touch myself at the same time. And it feels great, and I just didn't like click. Didn't have enough wisdom,
No,
and I think
right.
that's a failure. We should at least been given the information to then make our own informed decision.
Yeah,
basically,
that is very
is what I'm
fair.
saying.
Yeah, very fair.
Okay, so if let's say this, I mean, some would think porn's fine. Some will think no, it's wrong. Like it's not a good thing to consume. But if you're looking at it as like it's a drug, then alcohol, for example, people who are alcoholics are trying to change themselves and get off alcohol. Often it might be an easier thing for them to take up something different, like running,
Yes.
for example. So if you're finding yourself addicted to porn and it's affecting your marriage or your relationship because you can't have sex with your partner, or it inhibits you to do that, then I guess it's a personal thing. Like so for some, I'm not saying for David, it's a tool for him if he chooses to consume it, but for someone else, it's like, no, it's a vice. It's actually, I shouldn't be doing this.
But it is still a tool. It's just a bad tool in their case. It's still a tool.
Or
That's
they
what
don't
I
know
mean.
how to use it
That's what I mean. Like
responsibly.
all tools can be used negatively
They're
and positively.
responsible.
It's
Or
like
you don't have to use the tool.
No, of course you don't.
Yeah.
That's what I'm. But yeah, so a tool, like I've used this example earlier in the day. Someone who's got a healthy relationship with their partner and they're using porn to spice it up. Their sex life is fine. Their relationship is healthy, and they're just spicing up the relationship. That's using the tool in a positive way. Yeah. Now, someone there's the relationships on the rocks. They're not having a healthy sexual, emotional relationship.
Not fulfilled, or
and one or both of them starts using porn to fulfill their needs. They're using the tool in the negative way. And yes, that's right. It's a tool. You don't have to use it.
That situation was a massive predictor of divorce, apparently, if someone begins to use porn after they're together.
Makes a ton of sense. And kind of that's what happened in American Beauty, wasn't it? I think it was a terrible relationship, and he was jacking off in the shower.
Yeah,
he wasn't actually watching.
It's a movie we had to watch in high. Well, I had to watch in
didn't,
high school.
A good movie. I guess
It's a good movie. Yeah.
So he didn't outright. Well, he started fantasizing about his daughter's friend. So it's on the same ballpark because he wasn't satisfied with his marriage. So yeah, these things. Yeah, that's what I mean. It's a tool. I don't think it's inherently good or bad. It's how you use it.
It was his son's girlfriend, wasn't it? His son's girlfriend.
The son, yeah, right. Was it?
Or the girl?
I can't remember.
Yeah, it's that hard. You have to rewatch it now. I remember the neighbor being
he was
closeted.
Yes, and that's right. His work
sounds
sort
juicy.
of looked like he was. Yeah, we won't go down
That's
there.
right.
Just
Anyway.
got on the point that it's so widespread. I think also like the G-rated. I think there's such a thing as a concept, at least, of G-rated porn. Like Instagram and TikTok, full of it. Especially guys' TikToks, especially in the initial stages of the algorithm learning you. It'll just throw on like questionably young girls. Basically, it's porn. It's essentially porn with
it's like a
clothes on.
soft core.
Yeah,
that's what I call it.
but the like mechanisms are the exact same. Like it's still
dopamine.
it's doing
Rush.
Yeah.
Sexual.
It's
Well, I
the
mean, we've all
sexual
been there, right? You're on Instagram and you're not looking for it, but then a pair of titties pop up and one thing leads to it.
I know, yeah. Well, that's the thing, yeah. And it's kind of
triggered.
insidious, and people, I don't think anyone gives it the time of day to be like, I don't watch porn, but like they're flicking through many like pornographic images.
Yeah.
Well,
all
I
the
think
time.
for I don't know. I think the first time I was ever exposed to porn was probably between 10 and 12.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I didn't look for it. It was a friend from school who was actually over at my house. I'd gone to the bathroom and he was looking it up on the family computer. Anyway, that's a side topic.
Man, that's bold.
But I was thinking, like, if it back then when like computers were sort of, newish, crap slow, being able to find it so easily back then. Now we're in 2023. If I was 10 and 12 there, like, how easy would it be to just
so easy
send it out to kids, even kids, teenagers, and it's really like TikTok being the quote virus that it is, will just infiltrate.
Yeah. What do you guys think about the kids inevitably being exposed to it younger than we were, probably, and more like younger and then more frequently, probably, especially if they're consuming Instagram, TikTok. One thing leads to another. Cutie comes up on your Instagram as a 12-year-old and the link to OnlyFans, like, boom. Yeah. It's so much easier. What impact do you guys reckon that will have on their attitude?
I think it depends how you... I mean, I'm not a parent, so I can't really say, but how the child is being parented. So, for example, this might be controversial, but some, let's say, conservative Christians or whatever would argue we shouldn't be exposing our children to drag, or like the big thing when it was like drag storytelling. Like, why is there a need to do something like this? Whereas the other side would say, yes, like, let's empower, let them do what they want. Kids should be able to decide for themselves, sort of thing. Then you have it on their side where it's like, this is empowerment. This is what we should, like, let children decide if they want to be whatever gender. But then the other side, it's like, well, it's really how you parent your child. So, the point I was saying is, the other side would say, why then are you taking your kids to church? You're indoctrinating,
brainwashing.
So it's like, well, who's right, who's wrong? But I reckon probably the best way is to shelter your children from sex or porn as long as you can, but when, like, as they get older, you have to address it and you fully have to talk about it, because it's just something that's going to exist whether we like it or not.
Again, I don't have a clear answer, and I don't think there is one, but I can only speak for myself. Well, and other, seemed like it was very common with other peers. I think by the time year 6, I think, was that room 4 that we're in? Room 4 was year 6, I think.
It's like
that was when,
maybe like 10 years old.
I think, so people were playing around, there was, people had, I guess, what you'd call sexual feelings for one another. There was people starting to do kisses and crushes and girlfriends and
Spin
boyfriends.
the bottle.
So I mean, the harsh reality isn't it, that I think a lot of kids, everyone's different, there's slow developers, a lot of kids are starting to really, explore their own sexuality by a very young age, aren't they? About 10 or 11. And myself included, so I can only speak for myself, and I'm not about to say, all I can say is that
you feel the spice in talking about it. It feels spicy.
So that's what I mean.
Like you shouldn't be talking about it.
You feel like that sort of thing shouldn't be happening till 16, but that's just not the reality, is it? For most kids, most kids are already exploring their own sexuality one way or another by around 10 or 11. So again, I don't need to know what you do with that information. Do you say, right, I see that you're, starting to text girls. Now we need to have this conversation about porn. I don't know. There isn't a clear answer.
It could be a generational thing. Like our parents don't think. I don't think mine especially know like the full extent of how like not deranged. Maybe deranged is the right word, and like kind of like deep and disgusting it gets. Like especially in all boys high school, real quick.
It's like the deep dark ocean. Like you can see the surface.
And the parents have no idea. So how could they teach us about how to use the tool? I mean, when they didn't have the tool growing up.
No, but I mean, we can't say because I haven't asked my parents what. Well, I know that my dad did some effed up shit when a little bit older, but some effed up sexual stuff.
Oh yeah.
When he was, so, like, what my point there is with schools, boys' schools. No, I think they're probably worse in some cases, because you hear all these boarding story cases coming out now, don't you, about how there's all sorts of not only sexual, but certainly some sexual, but assaults going on in male boarding houses way back in the day, which I think has actually gotten a lot better because they're aware of it now, and that sort of stuff sort of you see it hushed up, covered up. So what my point is that I think boys' schools have probably always been disgusting, even though it might not have been because they were watching high-speed internet porn. It's just because, I mean, boys are always horny, aren't they, once they reach puberty? So there's probably their own form of disgustingness back then anyway. So again, I'm not going to ask my parents, hey, what sort of sick shit?
That's a good point.
But you would hope, they can't have been like living under a rock, can they? I mean, there must have been conversations about penises and stuff going on back then. I mean,
I suppose, and it's like oftentimes the studies have to mention that it's very hard to like objectively study the changes in brain and attitudes towards things, because they can't find any like young men who haven't watched porn as like a control group, because it's so so widespread. That 92% stat is quoting regular users or people who watch it regularly, and so it's got to be about 100% who have seen it.
So close. It'll be like a tiny smidge of absolute, like Mormons or something. Which would be pretty uncommon in New Zealand. Jehovah's Witnesses or something. Some super sheltered, but it'd be like a fraction, like 0.2%.
Yeah, like you said though, it's like it's a tool, and it's like down to personal responsibility. So I think maybe it isn't the school's necessarily job, and it will come down to your individual parent, because your kid's going to progress, they could be a year later than everyone else. So you probably don't want to force it too early.
Well, you could say, for example, you restrict your children from using devices, for some, I think I see in like my sister, she'll automatically give like the phone to the kids to keep them quiet, whereas why do you, anyway, point being, so you can shelter your kids to a certain extent, but in the big dark world or whatever, it's like they're on their own. So I think if you get on top of it, not necessarily if you're going to talk about pornography or sex, I mean, they're kind of different topics, but at least have your kids aware that it's a thing, I guess, and to talk about it, but you don't have to go into detail.
Talking about it could make it real cringe for them.
But that's the problem, isn't it? That seems wrong to me, and it is cringe, and it would be cringe. I would never have wanted to talk to my parents about sex or porn when I was 12 or 13, but it really shouldn't be that way, should it? It probably wasn't that way like 1,000 years ago, when people weren't wearing clothes much, and it would have been, penises weren't funny, vaginas weren't funny as they are today. It wasn't like this taboo. I feel like
it's even in the last 70 years, in some places in the US, it was illegal to have skirts that were below the knee.
Illegal?
Yeah. Well, I'd say.
Oh no,
you'd be fined.
If it was about
So it's like
So I mean, I don't. Yeah,
progressive.
It's definitely cultural. I think it's towards sex is cultural for sure. Because in Africa, those African mums have their it's not like a sexualized organ, the breast. It's
very functional, and they'll be able to talk to their kids about having sex, and it wouldn't be taboo and funny and awkward because. Yeah, it's a very weird phenomenon that it is awkward to talk about sex with your parents and stuff like that. I don't know. Yes, I don't know why it is. Shouldn't be.
I was just going to say, I guess we've all got different upbringings, which we've talked about, as to how if you saw parents in your home environment, hugging and kissing each other and loving each other, that would probably be your, I guess, your starting point for what relationships or what you experience of love would be. But if you don't see it in your family, and then I guess you're looking for role models or whatnot, it's teenagers were hanging out with each other, you'll find out about this sort of thing. It's quite it can be very damaging if it's not talked about or done right.
I think it's slightly different, but we hear about how I think both French and Germans introduce their kids to alcohol at quite a young age, but in a moderated way, in a sensible way. Whereas, and again, I don't know that, I think it's true, but I haven't done the homework to know that that is efficient, and they have less alcohol abuse problems in those countries than New Zealand. But it makes sense in theory that they're introduced to these tools in a sensible, moderate way from a young age, as opposed to New Zealand, where that doesn't happen, and then you just
start binge drinking
with your mates. Some shady 20-year-old buys you a box of beers or a bottle of Jack Daniels, and there's no instruction manual, and of course you get smashed. Whereas again, it's another less taboo, but still somewhat taboo, that your parents aren't really educating you about alcohol and so maybe that's an example of having these conversations with kids. Yeah, again, when they're ready, and that's what I mean. It's a shame that I think for a lot of kids, they wouldn't feel comfortable going to mum and dad and being like, well, it'd be very obvious in the case of a female, isn't it? Because they'd have their period, and then their parents would have to essentially know. At that point, parents should take the onus and say, well, we know that you've and I mean, there's still signs for boys, isn't it, as well? You're a little bit of bum fluff, and your voice starts cracking like mine still does. So
still generating jizz.
Yeah, it could happen before that you start having sexual thoughts. Probably does, but it's a shame that the kids, either themselves, can't go to their parents and know like that should be a normal thing. Like maybe that is something that they should teach at school, in the early stages of school, like year 3 or 4. Like puberty is going to happen, or sexual thoughts, emotional thoughts, fantasy, or whatever. You're going to be attracted to the people in a couple of years. As soon as you start having these feelings, go to your parents and talk about it. Like just being, doesn't have to dive deep. Just, I think it would just so that.
Well, like I remember distinctly, like I guess early year 9, year 10. Like my dad would specifically be like, oh, you got a girlfriend yet? like jokingly in a way, it's like, why? Yeah, like, exactly, like figure it out. Or like, I think there's even a couple of times we thrown out like, oh, are you gay? It's like, but that doesn't help. Like it's not that that doesn't put a fire underneath you to want to find a girlfriend. So
that's like, you should be having, especially if your dad as a male, it should be, I guess, vice versa for the female, that your mum should be a role model and guiding you through these things, because they've been through these things to an extent themselves, right? They went dating, and then they obviously got married and had kids, so they've had some experience, whether it be just slightly more moderate than ours, but they should be giving you that guiding advice. But in my case there was none. Sounds like in your case there was none.
So, not a lot.
0.
It's it really should be kind of one of the fundamentals, because these things are kind of like critical in your life.
Maybe something happens when you're a parent, and maybe you just forget or something.
It's
surely not.
It's weird.
Like, these young kids, what are they getting?
I'll do it next year. I'll do it next year.
But you do see that. I mean, my parents, I think, now are relative prudes, but they weren't complete prudes when they were like our age, and they mucked around with drugs or anything other than alcohol. My dad did a bit of smoking and stuff like that. I don't know, I've heard the story, and he was a bit naughty like myself. I've heard the stories, and now he's an absolute prude as an old man. But it's like he forgot that he was like me to an extent one day, and it's like, where do they switch off and then act as like this old Grinch to you when they should be relating to you, like, I was causing trouble at school when I was your age and stuff like that. But no, they just come from their current perspective.
I think.
But like seeing teenagers at the mall, be like, oh, what are these guys hanging out at the mall? So I literally was doing that 10 years ago. Like at least
that's probably a fair point. When I see groups of teenagers now, you like roll your eye like these guys. So I guess it is an easy fallacy to fall into, isn't it? That you start viewing things from your current perspective, not realizing you were once like these losers at the mall.
But I guess it's sorry, I don't want to go into a tangent, but like as you start getting older and you develop like wisdom, I guess you could say, and realizing like there's certain life stages you go through. You can't just be like party all till you can, but like through to your 80s or whatever. So
Sesh Lord.
So it's like you try and impart that wisdom to the people below you as younger, so they get the point as early as possible. For example, like, I could own a house if I started saving when I was 12. Like, yes, but it's not. You gotta have live life in some ways.
I think it's pretty. It's like so normalized now. I don't see any. I know a few uncles and stuff, and I'm sure they've referenced. But the point being, they're older and they're still watching porn probably just as much as either.
But there's that reputation of and I think it's probably me in my case, like the fun uncle. And that's it. Obviously, I'm still quite young, but that's quite a common stereotype, isn't it? The fun uncle who likes to have a few beers and he still acts like a kid. That's it. So that's it. We almost need that fun uncle in our life, because for some reason our parents don't do it. They're too serious. They're too serious.
Maybe kids do that to
I guess,
people.
And the fun uncle without the responsibility of having to be the
parent.
they can come in and introduce like, oh, here's some tips on the dating scene or whatever.
I bring him up just as an example of someone slightly older that I know for a fact will still watches porn. So I think I think as we get, like, unless you make a conscious decision that I'm not going to use it like at all, or a conscious decision about how much you're going to use it and stick to that, I feel like our generation, maybe slightly older, just whatever generation was first introduced to easy accessible internet porn, will just use it into old age, probably into their parenting, mum and dad stages, where it was just more of a hassle back then, so it maybe wasn't as ingrained a habit for the parents older. Like if they wanted to watch porn, it was more of a hassle. Get
Playboy,
a VHS, and you got the same one. Like
it gets the novelty.
Well, exactly. The novelty wears off. The infinite novelty of the internet.
You go to like the movie rentals on like a Friday, and they're behind the curtain. Yeah,
so good.
You'd be peeking when one of the older adults go in. You'd catch a break in the.
I would never do that. I'd be way too embarrassed. It'd be like buying condoms at the mall. Well, I'd go through self checkouts of condoms, but before self checkouts were a thing, I'd order the condoms online. I'd be way too embarrassed. Like,
I think you get over that stage.
You should. Really, I haven't. Well, I haven't need to buy condoms.
They were stereotyped.
Just like,
they were stereotyped as being the creeps when they in the video store. They were like the weirdos.
You should be quite. In the case of condoms, you should be really quite proud if you need to buy condoms. Of going through the checkout. Like,
yeah,
like, this guy's getting some.
It should be the opposite.
Tonight. Like, it should be a badge of pride. But anyway.
What do you guys reckon? So we often bring up AI, but that's only because everyone should be thinking about it, because I think it's pretty clear it's going to change like completely, as much as the internet did. The democratization of AI, at least. But in terms of pornography, I think if you ever have doubts about your porn use or want to quit it, I reckon you got to do it now, because AI is about to make porn so bust. AI and VR combo is about to make porn so much. It already blurs the lines between reality and not. We were talking before pod, like someone brings to mind people who criticize porn for displaying violent and aggressive behavior and saying that's going to influence people and harm them is kind of similar in my mind to people who would say that about like Call of Duty being violent and harmful. It's going to make people think it's okay to shoot, like to be violent with other people. I mean, when you're dealing with adults, I think you've got to give them the benefit of the doubt that they can. I mean, you're a free person. You can make your own decision. What do you guys think about that?
I just want to. Sorry, you started talking about AI, then you moved towards the other, the latter.
Yes, I have a bad habit of doing that.
No, that's fine. So
the AI is about to get so bussin', and porn is already like, it's not real.
But like if you add it into a VR
real
system where it's now you've got 3D depth or whatever, I barely used VR, so I can't really vouch for it. But like I would assume it would just your senses would just be enhanced, like
and the
tenfold.
Grip, the grip it had on. Remember the grip it had on you as a high schooler. Like you had an hour before your parents got home after school, guaranteed. Like, and then before bed again, maybe 2 or 3 times a day, sometimes. For some people, if you have time. But imagine the pull of that just on a flat screen was so like powerful. It's like all you could think of sometimes at school. One thing leads to another. It's a hot teacher, and you go, as soon as I'm getting home, I need this.
You're texting a girl.
Or you're on the bus and there's someone from another school.
So imagine the AI VR combo. The pull is going to ruin kids' lives. They're going to miss school, I reckon.
Well,
I'm sick, Mum, I'm sick, and then jack off all day.
But then you've also got the
fact,
up. Like, so you could talk about like deep fakes, for example. Like
it's the first one.
Yeah, well, that's stage 1.
Yeah,
you can see it in music now. It's like you can replicate music where it sounds almost identical. But I guess now let's say you fantasize a actress or whatever. Well, realistically, they're not going to have videos, but deep fakes will replace that. And so then I see it as kind of like a rabbit hole. You'll start wanting to go deeper and deeper down to where it becomes more, I guess, far from reality. Whereas if, let's say you're using porn, watching porn as like a purely just to like
Means to an end.
yeah, means to like release
Yeah.
whatever. It's like, well, you're probably going to go for more vanilla or just
Yeah.
stuff. So I think it's crazy to think what AI is going to do to affect, but I think probably more for the worse.
Yeah.
That sounds quite dismal, but
What do you think about porn in general for society? The democratization and just like abundance of porn. Do you think it's been net good or net bad for society? Can you feel?
probably, I'd probably say net worse, to be fair. I feel, I mean, this is not directly correlated, but when you talk about like the like marriage, for example, we all know most statistically there's a high percentage of marriages end in divorce.
It's going up.
I think that's more.
I'm not saying that this specific
because I
reason.
think that's from a loss of religion.
Okay.
Because religion used to be, the strict.
Yeah.
But
But then you could say that kind of relates.
yes,
like
in a way, more
religion
freedom,
is
less shackles, less.
Yeah.
The
Whereas
idea.
if you're prescribing to a religion or guidelines or whatever, for the most part they're against pornography or
Yeah.
against that. sort of
Look,
thing.
I don't have concrete opinions on this, and because I was raised in a nuclear family, Catholic family, I guess I'm still, that's my leanings, that's the way it should be. But I mean, there's arguments out there that, like marriage and monogamy isn't like critical to being a human. A long time ago, don't think it was really religion, and I say there's an argument that that's beneficial and is good and should be the way it is, but there's also another argument that it's not really necessary, that people can just play around, and these blended families are really quite normal and stuff. As I say, I lean the other way, but there is that argument that this is all just an artificial system, which, as I say, my rudimentary understanding, it was really the introduction of religion, obviously, I guess Christianity in particular in the Western world, because I guess Muslims are a wee bit different with their rules, was the idea of you marry one person, you stay with them for the rest of your life. And as I say, there's strong arguments that is highly beneficial, whether it's natural
we're here today
or not.
because of cultures that
Exactly.
did that.
Yeah, exactly. So,
and that's where people criticize like the falling religion is like the ripping out the roots, and so everything else is going to slowly die.
There's an argument for that. Yeah, I don't know one way or the other. To answer the question, I would say no strong move, one bad or good. It just is.
Sure.
I don't think it's had a major impact on and individuals. For some, it will have destroyed their lives, whatever, porn addicts, and become sickos because of it, or just can't get a fix without watching the most disgusting porn. For others, it's enriched their life. Either they've made a career from it, or they've just got this great sex life because it's so open and flourishing. On a societal level, I don't think, I think for the vast majority of people like us, porn has had some impact on our life, as we say, but it's not like dictate. It hasn't changed, it hasn't altered the complete outcome of your life, has it?
Well, there's you have no control to measure it against. That's what I was talking about. The
Fair,
energy,
but I mean, if you look, again, I can only speak for myself. I'm a somewhat functioning member of society, so it hasn't. Yeah, you're right. In an alternative universe, if I never watched porn, maybe I'm the Prime Minister of New Zealand or something.
Yeah, well, the energy's powerful, and that's what I was saying. I'm not sure if it's just you're either gonna, if you build it up, you're gonna do something sexually violent or not. I think like it's possible, at least, as airy-fairy as it may sound, that energy, if it's like the opposite of death, if it is like the life energy, then it could be put to much better use, and on a massive scale, if everyone's effectively waste or diffusing that energy, not letting it build up, then maybe great things that could have happened don't, because it's all being just dissipated. It's not like getting built up in that way.
Certainly an argument for that.
At
the same
it
time,
makes like intuitive sense. It feels like it makes
but
sense,
at the same
but it's not
time,
scientific.
at the same time, it's there to be released, isn't it? More so in the release of sex without protection than jacking off or sex with protection, because if everyone was building up their energy and never releasing it, then no one would be born.
Everyone would be floating around instead of driving cars.
I think it's there. There is that case, and you can harness it, but ultimately, I think it's not I think it's inherently designed to be released. And we know if you don't jack off or have sex for a long enough time, your body does it in your sleep anyway, doesn't it? So I think, there's a case that it should be limited to once a month or something, but you can't just build that energy up for 10 years because it's going to release itself one way or another.
Good point.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
Well, I mean, probably me thinking on more of like a bigger picture thing. So, like, for the most part, whether you might disagree or agree, but I guess the natural design of sex is, I guess, for procreation to bring forward children. But when you start living in an environment, or as society progresses and becomes more, progressive to these sort of ideas, I guess, it becomes more accepting. So then you start opening like Pandora's box, where once you start, you can't, put it back in. So let's say, like, I'd say more people aren't having children these days. As we get older, it's like the desire to have children kind of is becoming less. So just on societal level or as a species, like, that's a detriment to that. So I'm not saying porn is the root of that, but in its cloud, pornography as a topic, when you start, and this is a personal thing, it's not to say everyone thinks the same, but when you start introducing new ideas or promiscuity, or then you start having where it's more accepted to have an OnlyFans, with, like, I guess I understand like the financial benefits for empowering the woman, but I think personally, and if I was putting myself in this, I couldn't do it. Like, I would feel it's more degrading to me, like to myself, but then a lot of, I guess it's seen the other way. It's like, no, I can do what I want, and society allows that to happen. It's like saying, I guess, if someone was overeating and becoming obese, like, to some extent you're accepting, we don't want to shame them, we're all about body positivity, but like there's I guess kind of like a deep core where we know, like, no, they probably should stop eating, and that is unhealthy. But no one's really like willing to put their foot down, I guess, unless you could say, if it comes back to religion, it's generally more like the conservative side that stamps their feet down and draws a line in the sand, but society will cast them aside, and I guess
it's none of your business.
Yeah, it's none of your business.
Quote.
Yeah.
Quote, it's none of your business.
Yeah. So that's, I guess, it creates more division.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I'm coming from, where I think over time, when you start introducing more like, not say all progressive ideas are bad, but it allows for more controversial things to alleviate. And then that's when you start just create, like, I feel the last 20 years is just more divisive than ever, that the society we live in. So how are you going to put it out? And I'm not saying porn is completely bad. Like, it's a tool for some people, but it's like lighting a match. Once you it catches fire, it's hard to contain it.
Yeah.
Like, it's like oxygen just fuels.
I think
I've never thought about it. There's some real good points in there. Like, if we're talking about, life, death being the number one possibly, and then porn being a close second or something for recreation purpose, for life purposes, being the opposite of death, then, like you said, falling birth rates, it's not going to be the cause, or it might not even be a cause.
Yeah.
But I think it's plausible that it's a cause in the mess of Pandora's box and everything that surrounds pornography, and that might then. The thing is, there's not any science that says it's bad or good, and make a moral. Science can't make moral judgments.
No.
And
I think there are scientific explanations of why birth rates are falling, and it's not because of porn; it's because of education. If you look, the most educated countries in the world have a lower birth rates.
Or it's a correlation.
I believe that's been proven that it's causation, not correlation. I think it makes a lot of sense, because it's kind of a bad idea to have kids as much as we need to, because it's a massive investment in time, loss of sleep, loss of money. So objectively, it's a really bad idea to have a kid. Now, as I say, you have to have kids, unless you're wealthy, it doesn't matter less. But it's painful for the woman. There's a chance of dying. Historically, dying in childbirth when a woman's giving birth is very common. Not so much with modern technology, but it's messy. It's massive time consumption and resource drain. So objectively, like if I had a kid like right now, like
it would destroy your life and your well-being.
Your current life.
Yeah, it would drain a lot of my money. I wouldn't be anywhere near to buying a house if I had a kid tomorrow because of the resources that I'd have to pour into it. So
well, that's assuming that all those things are bad, because the reward is you have a child.
I know.
Yeah,
but
not everything does need to be.
I agree, and I agree. I agree.
Sorry,
but I agree. But that it's the reason, and it makes sense. Again, I don't have the studies on me, but I know I've read that, and it makes a lot of sense, because if you're living in a well-educated, if you think the opposite, the countries that have the highest birth rates are the least educated countries, like Nigeria, because and women are still second-class citizens there. They're objects, more so than they're a vehicle for men to have fun with, and they don't have any idea about what they're doing. That's a massive generalization, because I'm sure there's plenty of the education is getting better in places like Nigeria, but still relative to the Western culture, there's a lot of illiterate people, especially illiterate women, and they don't know what they're doing, and they don't think through the consequences of what they're doing. So I don't disagree. We'd all hope that having a child will be the most amazing thing in your life, but if you're highly educated and you're doing the numbers, you might never make that leap, or you might delay it by 10 years because you're like, I have to quit my job. I love my job as the woman. Yep. I'm moving up the ladders, and the mortgage payments are not going to be. Things are going to get real tight. So that education, where they're not thinking about that, and in these tribes that don't think about those sorts of things. So I do believe that that's the primary reason. It's education. People are too logical. They're thinking about how wrong having a child can go. And
I think with that example, though, it's a good example, but I guess in not all countries, but I guess lower. I mean, how would you explain it? But having more children is also related to the fact that the lifespan of, I guess, the chance of the child dying is a lot higher. So you're more inclined to have more kids as a survivalship.
There'll be that as well. There'll be that as well. And obviously the other big one is, and more so, I guess, like Islamic countries, the religious beliefs they have, obviously all sorts of strange, what I would consider strange beliefs around sex, marriage, having children, and I'd say also there, as we all well know, that women, more so, like men might be relatively well educated, but women in those countries, especially now in like countries where they have the radical ones, like Afghanistan is back to that now, where women can't go to school. That's it, and they can just get impregnated on demand.
So I guess from a cultural perspective, I mean that's somewhat religious, but if now it's seen on the shoes on the other foot, okay, now women can be empowered and they can do what they want. We're allowing them to, I guess.
I think it's better than the opposite. It might be too far. There might be a nice
Should
middle
there be
ground,
a common ground?
But I'd far rather that we have our system than the system in West Africa or Iran. I think, where women have very little rights and everything's taboo. Men have less rights too, and you certainly won't be talking about sex with your parents in those countries, or porn, because it's all, you'll get your fingers chopped off if you watch porn and all sorts of. I'd far rather our system, and say it might be too far, too liberal, but I'd rather be too liberal than too conservative.
That's pretty reasonable, I think. So I think I'd disagree, but I'd in the general premise maybe, but I would also much rather this than the alternative.
It doesn't have to be that it's the only alternative, but it does seem to be the way.
It's
very hard to keep this middle ground, isn't it? Because depending on your country, the regime, whatever, people push more and more their way. So at the moment, it seems in New Zealand, but Western societies in general, if we want to call it progressive, more so than liberal or left-wing ideology, is the driving force in Islamic countries and West African countries, and other places like that. It's conservative, extreme conservative, mainly religious, as I say, in countries and Middle Eastern countries, that is driving the thoughts there. So they're getting tighter and tighter. Well, some of them are loosening up a little bit. I think like women can drive in Saudi Arabia now, as ridiculous as that sounds, but that's kind of my point, right? But it's kind of hard because, things, it swings and roundabouts. We'll probably get a conservative drive back here, as I think there was like 70s example with Richard Nixon drug wars, obviously the big one, but that was a driving force in the West for a while. All Western countries followed with like the crazy drug laws that we have now. And now we're slowly, some places more so than New Zealand, are changing those drug laws. That's just one example, but that was, again, extreme conservative thought train that was driving that. So we'll probably eventually get, and I think that may actually be happening in places around Europe now after all the COVID crap. Like they say the Italian government, I think, is like a fascist or something, or openly admires Benito Mussolini. I don't know what the truth is here, and I don't really care, but she's certainly a conservative, and I believe other countries in Europe are going that way because of the crazy things that I guess primarily progressive governments did when COVID was the flavour of the month. So yeah, I think I don't know. Yeah.
That brings to mind another point I wanted to mention about libertarianism, especially with porn. You know, like you kind of alluded to it before, where it's like it's the conservatives and hand in hand with that the religious Christians that kind of vocalizing their opinion when like a libertarian or liberal say like it's none of your business as long as they're not hurting anyone, blah, blah, like the classic. But I think I've come to realize that's kind of a flaw with libertarianism. I used to classify myself as one, as long as no one's hurting each other, blah blah blah. But it doesn't. I don't think it fosters a very like. It's not good for society in general if everyone's like you're saying. It's created like it's somehow possibly related to the division that we see, and without some like overarching like I believe in the good of the country or I believe in the good of something like a collective, then which involves impeaching on people's freedoms. You know, like our country, we have things we can't do because it's in our law under our country.
Everyone,
for the good of the whole country, even though it might not necessarily be in the good of my freedom personally, or you know, like the drug laws.
So
stuff. Like, it's good for the whole country to ban meth, but
I know
I could probably do meth and be fine.
I know.
Eyebrows.
I know the point that you're coming from, and I would still consider myself primarily libertarian. I'm not as extreme as I once was, but I can recognize that flaw. That's because we've had this conversation before, regardless of our political philosophy, whether we're diehard libertarians, we all want to enforce our worldview upon others. So it's very hard to be a true libertarian. I think in America anyway, a lot of libertarians tend to really be light conservatives, if it would be the way I describe it. They're mild conservatives. They lean conservative. Ron Paul's a great example of that. He's a libertarian in some senses, but when it comes to some things, he is conservative essentially. And that's probably what cost him the election back in the day, because he got tripped up on that. I think
sidetracked.
Yeah, I think abortion was a big one that he got caught up on. So that's an example, is that if you're a true libertarian, you can't really be against abortion. I'm not completely against abortion, but I think it should be much tightly more regulated than it is. So I'm not a true libertarian because, a true libertarian would say that whatever, it's none of my business. You can do whatever you want, even though someone's being... Well, I guess there is that argument that if you're a libertarian, you also can argue that someone's being hurt in that case. But anyway, I think the point that I was making was...
ADHD is getting the better of you.
I was going somewhere with that idea of
libertarianism.
That's where I was going with it.
Cool.
We need to stop in my opinion, we need to stop trying to force our worldview upon others, because that's it. Stop thinking about what's right for society or the country and start thinking about what's right for yourself and your family and people close to you. That's the problem, is that we all want to change the world. We all want to change the way the country is, as I say, and force our will upon the world. So you've got to be, I think, quite wise to pick up on that and be like, actually, it's none of my business what other people do. I can't change society, or I can try and provide value to society, but I can't force people to think the way, as much as I think that my way is the right way. So I think if that
well spoken. I think the best way to change society in the world is to change yourself. So you can be all you can do is change yourself and perhaps your immediate family, and that's the best. If your family is strictly anti-porn, well, it's kind of like I was mentioned last week. You can pick and choose your ideology. We'll see how that attitude turns out, and then you'll be an example for better or worse, whether anti-porn is better or not. And I think it helps sometimes to look at the people who are super pro porn like activists online. I don't know anyone personally. I think they're kind of
You
very
do.
small. Oh yeah, true.
The person we talked about.
As opposed to the
earlier
people
today.
who are no, I don't know anyone who's actively super against it. But I know people who are definitely vocally against it. They say no, it's probably not. Most of them Christian. And then I think you can at least look at those two people's lives. I know porn's going to be a very small aspect of everyone's life, and it's going to be impossible to tell whether it's causative or correlative. But I think the older I get, the more conservative-minded view about pornography tends to come along pre-packaged with better overall people. Better, won't be the right word. I don't know, more balanced. The people you want to build a community with, people who you would love to be your neighbours.
There's a strong argument. I think there's no black and white answer, but I know what the point you're trying to make, but I think it's a misconception. Just as you probably think all these porn addicts or massive porn users are degenerates, they're here.
I don't think that.
No.
But
So you think they're all
I
conservative?
think it's probably
anti-porn?
better to have no porn than to be.
Okay, and it's a fair opinion, but
It's
I
coming
think
from someone who uses porn
I think
a
it
lot.
can. Yeah, but it can. I think I understood what you're saying, and that idea of I've got this conservative neighbor, and he's very well dressed,
to bite me.
but the point I'm making is we've all heard the stories, and there's been, and a great example is the Catholic Church, isn't it? How many sickos are in the Catholic, because they're so repressive.
That's a good point.
With their sexuality, that these sicko, priests, it's terrible that that's the way it is, and I think it's really a Catholic thing, not Christianity. It seems to, I think, like other dominations of Christianity have more reasonable laws around or rules about sexuality.
Well, like a pastor is able to get married, for example, and like a
Anglican,
Anglican
and woman have,
evangelical or
so
whatever.
So that's what I mean. You can be way too repressive, and then that's it. You're too repressed, and then you end up becoming a sicko because it's just
That's a good point. Maybe it brings to mind that the rates of like child sexual abuse is about roughly the same in professions that involve children as with the Catholic Church. I think.
Right.
I think I've read that. So like, and you're thinking teachers, teachers. Because it's obviously the minority still, like the Catholic Church. It's obviously still a minority.
It's only, but it's, you would hope, like, that's the point, is that
anything involving kids, there's always a few freaks who are attracted to those jobs.
But also, like, being religious or whatever, you expect these people to be role models and to be the best people in the world, So there's a bigger onus, and it would be the same with teachers. You expect these people to be held to a high standard because they're meant to be role models. They're meant to be the best people in society, aren't they? So when those people abuse their privilege, it's even worse than an average person doing it. It's terrible no matter what. But I guess, again, the point is that you can get these people who go so far conservative and they repress all their sexuality and stuff, and then human to humans, and they leads them to do sick things, because that's what can happen. There'll be some conservatives who don't. There'll be a lot that don't, but it can go the opposite way. Yeah. That's what I mean. When you're making a generalization, you're like,
Yep. I know what you're saying. Fair enough.
Yeah,
fair.
There'll also be a population, I don't know number-wise, but of people who, or I say men, for example, who do just want to have like a loving relationship or partner or girlfriend, but just aren't able to for whatever reason, whether just girls aren't into them or, and that's a shame, because then in those certain circumstances, like, it's almost like
incel.
What else do you do?
What else do you do?
Society can be rough, and that's what I mean. It's better that an incel, and again, it won't be a hard and fast rule, won't work for some, but it would be better that at least some of those incels who are potential predators, rapists, get their release from porn.
Yep. That is, I agree.
Again, it's not a hard and fast rule that will work for incels, but
it's not nice to even think about. But yeah, if there's like if it can be as a tool, like you said, for like someone who's a pedophile, it's obviously if you had to pick between them acting it out in real life and watching porn.
Yeah, I guess.
Because
there's still a child getting harmed and making a child
good.
porn.
Well, I mean, then in that case, you'd have to make fictional,
that's going to happen.
Drawing or animation, which is like
that won't work for most of these.
It's I think it's kind of as a false dichotomy, the right word. Like, it doesn't have to be those two, Well, no, I don't think that's the right word, but it doesn't have to be those two options. I don't think there's got to be another option.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking for more regular people that super ugly dude who can't get in their shapes.
Well, okay. Well, this may be somewhat related, but like prostitution, for example,
I was
definitely related.
like in some
outlet.
countries or states in the US, it's legal and it's not in others. New Zealand here, it's fine. You know, like
I think another one of those things where, in theory, if you regulate it, ban it, it should be a good thing. But then it's like drugs here.
there will be a black market.
Sickos, it's better that it's safe, highly regulated. The
Yeah.
women are protected than having the gangs, pimps running it. So it's just
Because it's whether you, well, I'd say most people probably disagree with it and wouldn't ever partake with it,
I don't
with the
think I
prostitute.
would.
But like at the same time, it's like
Jerry.
I can kind of turn a blind eye to that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, they're just living their life or trying to make a living. Who are they? Like, who am I to judge them? It's not affecting me, which is, I guess, the libertarian stance. And then for those two people, it's transactional based. They're both benefiting from it. I guess there's that option, but it's all personal, isn't it? Like if it's
I think that's the beauty that
Yeah.
it can be personal. It can't be personal in Iran.
Yeah.
Government tells you what to do,
Yeah.
and people obviously will go against it. But if they get caught, the punishments are obscenely severe.
Like a drug, you shouldn't ban it. Libertarians
Regulate
probably
it.
better. Yeah,
Regulate
regulate it.
Regulate it.
And so speaking of regulation, seems like currently I think Utah just recently, as we speak, has a bill to require ID on every single visit on porn in an attempt to stop kids getting it. Like alcohol, we all kind of decide on a rough age as a society that it's best for the society if only 21-year-olds have it. 20-year-olds, sorry, your freedoms. You can't drink legally.
You can
so
go to war.
That's obviously good with you can go to war though. It's obviously good for makes sense for porn to be regulated. It's already supposed to be R18. Like you're not supposed to, but because it's the internet, it's all free and open. Which is how the internet should be, in my opinion.
Yes.
Is the cat out the bag? Do you guys think there's any way
It is.
to
I don't think
mitigate
there's any
that?
way to like regulate it to stop people from watching it. But I think
kids watching it.
Yeah. I mean,
But
in theory,
you need you'd have to have the population voluntarily present their ID, and that becomes messy.
like VPNs. Though.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I suppose theoretically,
The-
you have to, no. Fake IDs.
The
Someone will let
intention
you-
behind it is probably you could argue for. Like, it makes sense.
It'd have majority
But it's
support.
the
I'm sure.
execution is
Well,
like
in
one.
Utah, it would for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, how are you actually going to implement this? And two, like a system only works when the people that it's designed for are on board.
Yeah.
Like people will just bypass it, or
Mm.
I mean, if the idea is it for them secretly to deter the population from consuming porn, well, that might work for a solid chunk of people,
It'll
but
work in Utah.
like other
They're Mormons.
there'll be but there'll be a population that it's not going to change a thing. Like
When it
that's like
changed in New
guns. You can
Zealand.
take away guns
But if they're already there.
if they're already there.
I think like an example of regulation which potentially has worked is there was that big thing a while back. I forget what the reason was, but all the porn websites had to like verify the people who upload videos had to like be verified.
It's kind of at the other end of the process, isn't it? Catching it before they upload
Yes,
it. Rather
yeah.
than
So the idea was there was heaps of child porn that was on like Pornhub and stuff. So they had to make sure that everyone that uploaded videos has to verify. I didn't read too deeply into it, but I think that's an example. A good it's not stopping people from watching porn, but it's at least hopefully filtering out
the worst.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So-
Again, policing it, that must be a fucking nightmare.
Yeah, I guess it'd be like sports books, how they have that process down to a science with the verification.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's
Before
ways,
you can like
there's ways of
participate, you have
doing
to
it.
verify.
True.
There's also, I know, like in specific sports for like streaming content, like if it's the right to, let's say it's state based, and let's say use Canada for example with their ice hockey, certain regions won't be able to view a game because it's blacked out in that region. So like, there's probably some ways that it could be easily done to the masses, but Like most people will learn how to bypass those.
Yeah,
sort
that's
of,
it.
you
There's
just get a
still people
VP. Yeah,
exactly. There's still
Especially
people in
kids,
those
of all
states.
people, especially the kids who are the new technology.
It's
You
like
just
us
learn.
when there's a
Yeah.
sports event that we can't watch on Sky, you get an illegal stream.
yeah,
So
or like
people-
a movie you can't find.
like
you torrent
people
it.
who live in those states where there's a blackout most of them will do that. The boomers, the mongoloids won't do it because they don't know how. But the people our age and the teenagers, they'll just and it'll be the same
Find a
with
way.
porn. They'll find there'll be someone who finds a way to capitalize on that where they like sell their ID online if they're over the age to watch porn to kids to access. It's just with the internet, it's too vast. There is a way that it would have to be so severe. It would have to be like China.
Yeah.
And even in
Yeah.
China, I think they still Chinese people because VPNs. So you just
Yeah.
have to accept that people are going to do things.
It's going to be real hard. I think there's a chance.
Educate.
Like AI, we mentioned AI, and I assumed it was just going to be just entirely bad. But there's talks about with the deep fakes coming up, there's going to need to be some method of verifying something posted by an actual person, like for the whole internet, because it's going to be so rampant. So perhaps AI will somehow, face recognition or whatever, some kind of privacy breaching surveillance the one positive of that, it might be able to fully lock out. If it's using a camera, you can't really get past that as a kid. You could be, I imagine it'll be sophisticated enough to not fall for like a mask or something. But if there's a global system that's
V for Vendetta mask.
yeah. And it just goes, "You're not Daniel. Go ahead." That could work out, but it'd require some privacy breaches.
That's it. Where we talked about this last week, or was it last week or the week before? We talked about with crime and punishment. You can have your system severe, and it will reduce crime, but it'll
restrict freedoms,
and some people get hurt that shouldn't get hurt in the process. So that's right. We laugh at countries like China, surveillance states, limited rights, but it's effective, isn't it? I'm sure crime in China is much lower than crime is in New Zealand, but it comes with strings.
Regulations will always affect people in different ways.
What way, as I say, I much rather we err on the side of freedom where we aren't being spied on and government.
Well, and that's a pro in your.
It will come with negatives. There'll be unregulated kids watching stuff and sickos and stuff like that. But I'd rather that so that the majority of society can function without having to worry about Big Brother. China
in that respect is a pro for your argument, being that thinking about what's good for society comes at the massive detriment to individual freedom.
Huge cost.
So
well, I mean, you could argue.
I didn't think about that.
You could argue, for example, China, if they had a regime that was purely for the, purely for the people, then there would be a huge benefit for society to have a thing. But then
they claim that they are, and there is a theory that I do believe they have good intentions, but that's it. They believe that for the betterment of society, that I guess they think humans are too stupid to regulate themselves, so they have to do the regulating for them. So I do believe like the Chinese government has good intentions, but that's what I mean. It comes with
putting a lot of faith in a small minority of people
with unintended consequences, and there will be corruption, as like there always is when you have such hierarchies like that. Sorry, I think
no. I say then you could argue that it's a good system, but
So China,
North
system,
Koreans,
that's
like that's probably the extreme, like to the point where they believe.
But crime in North Korea is probably really low, right? I would imagine
probably because of defect. You don't want to be caught defecting.
Well, and not just defecting. You don't want to be caught catching doing a crime because you're probably going to get either killed or put in prison for your entire life. But that's what I mean. It's an extreme system. People I don't even think can access the internet in their home. They have to go to like a university to use the internet over there.
Screens and they just sit in front of it and pretend.
Windows 95. So that's an extreme. Like I'm sure crime in North Korea is super low, but at what cost?
Yes.
So
good point. To think about that.
You can only try and balance it, and some countries balance it better than others. I think we have a solid balance in New Zealand. And if
there's a balance,
If we're going back to crime, if we're to believe the headlines, crime is getting worse here. So maybe a country that is a little bit more regulated than New Zealand, but still relatively free. I'm just taking a wild stab, but maybe a country like Switzerland. I have no idea. I don't have, but maybe slightly.
The governments or the powers that be hands might be forced. I'm thinking, so pornography is an example of like a censorship freedom trade-off, but also like as technology improves with AI and whatnot, I'm thinking about like CRISPR, like the ability to generate bacteria and viruses possibly down in your own home. Like you can print off like viruses theoretically in the future. That's going to kind of force the hand of control, because you can't
have to
let
have
it get
some
out.
regulations, don't you?
Yeah, you can't let it
For
get
some
out. And
things,
like
yeah.
porn's already out, but and the effects maybe aren't so
They're not-
sinister.
but
Something like that, where someone could just print out any old bacterial
So
virus
it's like you
and
can't
release it.
So it's like you
have
can't
to
make
suppress.
bombs at home, and so
Yeah.
some regulations,
Nuclear.
some things that present such a threat. We can all argue that if you can create a deadly virus in your home, that
How much is it of a threat is pornography though? That would be a matter of opinion.
I just wanted to possibly bring up the example with like social media as a whole.
Yes.
So like, let's say all the CEOs or whatever got together and said, you know what, let's not have like, I don't know, what's the best way to explain it? Like, Instagram is just filled with like, and something, you know, soft porn or TikTok, and they decide, like, you know what, we're going to steer away from that. Yes, that might be good, for society, but then there will be a certain portion of people now that will be affected by that and will lose livelihoods.
remember
right?
when OnlyFans tried to like do
That's
that?
what I was going to say. Yeah, that's what I was leading to. Is with OnlyFans, like everyone knew what OnlyFans for the most part was for, and they came out by saying we're not going to allow like porn on our
Crazy.
website.
What were they thinking?
Which
How did they even think that was going to work?
you could probably argue that maybe it was actually a ploy, like
A marketing.
it was a
Sure,
marketing
people's
thing
attention
for them to. So everyone's going to complain and then
Yeah,
backtrack.
like that.
Yeah,
That's
so
genius.
Yeah, it's
That's,
good idea. Good thinking.
I guess where I'm going with this.
Remember, one platform that did it was Tumblr. That was like the porn platform. You're allowed to post titties on there, and then they banned it. Now
now
no
they're
one
dead.
uses Tumblr.
So
They shot
it's like
themselves in the
the
foot.
whole Pandora's box thing again. Like, I guess like, is it too far gone? And now we just have to accept this is the way it's going to be.
I think so. And I think you just have to accept that
Yeah.
people are into sexual things one way or another, whether you have restrictions or not. Yeah, you can limit it to some degree, but people,
I guess.
you can't stop people from having
Yeah,
sexual
but for the average
energy.
Joe, like, you don't really want to be exposed to it every day, but you just are for the sake. Like,
Well, I think you can regulate it
I
yourself,
guess,
can't you?
algorithms.
Yeah.
Like, if you start watching
I think
people, I don't know, start watching people working out, you're more likely to get
yes.
gym
So
footage.
stop looking at
But-
looking at chicks. On
But I
Instagram.
guess I think TikTok's the different one, whereas,
don't use TikTok.
but like TikTok will just throw one in there randomly.
Yeah. So
Like-
don't use TikTok.
So maybe that's what it is. Just ban TikTok.
I saw a meme about TikTok on Facebook today where it was like the West exporting opium to China in like 1700s. Had like images of the British boats going over, and then it's like China exporting cancer to the West in 2020 with TikTok.
Yeah.
It's very true. And well, to an extent, I don't care if people use TikTok. I don't use TikTok myself because you hear enough bad stuff about it that it's the Chinese government can see everything you're doing. And if it is a Chinese tool and the Chinese government is using it to corrupt the West, that's right. It's going to have things like they're going to throw at you some soft porn, even if you're not looking for soft porn. Whereas for the most part, I don't really have much, unless I go looking for it on Instagram. I don't really have soft porn come up because I'm on there mainly for like ADHD stuff. So I just get heaps of ADHD videos. So I don't really get naked or bikini photos coming up on my feed.
You've resisted the urge. I think I just
Well,
had a thought.
I've been there.
Yeah, I just had a thought that rather than having to censor, it's possible that pornography, letting pornography become so widespread, like the government could have put a crackdown on it years ago. When everyone knows it's kind of an issue, it's kind of like there's something it's not working perfectly, but you can't really do anything about it. Seems like possibly pornography allows the state to not have to censor because maybe everyone's just dissipating their energy that would otherwise lead to like tension and possibly unstable social structure, you know? So it's kind of like the Brave New World theory versus 1984, where you just give people so much pleasure they don't do anything, rather than having to crack down on them.
Yeah.
Let them just
I think that
dopamine
you
themselves.
can never prove this, but in theory, like we all know that dating, especially with younger people, is getting like worse with on their phones all the time. It's
Young
harder.
people having less sex than ever as well.
That's right. So there's a theory that if we didn't have porn the way it is, there would be way more rapes and sexual assaults because people are getting way less sex than they were 100 years ago when it was relatively, well, again, I don't know because I didn't live 100 years ago, but it seems like there were, there you go, there's crack.
Damn, you're so close.
So close.
It seems like it was a bit easier to get sex 100 years ago because it was almost forced upon you, like not organized marriage, but the family friend,
girl.
yeah, and it was kind of put in place. Whereas it's very hard in the modern world with social media and online dating platforms. For a lot of people, and I've touched on this, I kind of fell into that fallacy a bit myself as a younger person. The extent of the relationship or dating is online. So you never meet up in person, and that's, I believe, is somewhat of an epidemic in young people today. So there is a theory that if we didn't have porn to fulfill all these nerds not having sex, that there would be more sickos than perhaps there would have been 100 years ago when porn was less prevalent. But people it was much easier. You're forced to, you couldn't stay at home on the internet because there was no internet. You had to go out and mingle in the real world.
Could that be equivalent though to like the example you used where you have a real strict on crime and you end up you stop like some real violent crimes, but the cost is like the majority lose a lot of freedoms. Could it be with porn as well? It's like there's less possibly
right, but more people
rapes, but more people are just
mildly,
generally flaccid, like generally just like
sure,
good word to use. People are just generally like bleh and like don't do anything.
Yeah,
as a cost of that.
You could argue that, but then I guess you just have to look at society and is it still functioning? I think to a relative degree it is, right? Most people are still functional members of society, going to work, paying their taxes, and so
what's the trajectory? I'm just
they
thinking
might be more like robotic, but they're
but
still relatively productive as a whole.
Yeah. I
think
agree.
I
think the trajectory could be going the wrong way.
Yes, I don't disagree. I think
more
people we know all of these things like mental health issues,
that's what I was going to say,
anxiety, all of that.
It's going the opposite way.
It's getting worse. So
there is some supposed links. There's you can find many papers on it about the links between porn and mental health going down, like depression and anxiety.
Probably find a few that would say the opposite, right?
I know, exactly.
It's the same as anything.
Yeah.
Meat causes cancer? No, meat cures cancer.
Yeah. That's because it's so complicated. And everyone watches porn, basically.
Yeah, well, it's subjective to the point where, like, if you consume porn, like, you might think it's awesome in the moment, and then afterwards I feel like crap. But then there'll be some that watch it and be like, yeah, this is awesome. Like, can't wait for my next. Like,
other people have that genetic thing for alcohol. Like, it's like crack to them. It's like a mad upper.
Yeah. Well, so we were talking off the pod. We won't mention, but there's someone we all know, mutual friends with, who's engaged, but he's still like he's an addict. Like he will consume and he'll watch and
just fuels him.
It's like his alcohol. Or
can't stop.
His drug. It's like when he's drinking, like he comes over to you and hey, look at that. Look at that.
We all love him.
Yeah.
That's one point I want to make before we wrap up. That in the porn sphere, some of the researchers have found that just the thought, what your personal attitudes towards it are, kind of determine the outcome, kind of like a placebo effect. If you think porn's something to be like shameful of and like it's a bad thing, but I do it anyway, I shouldn't do it. It tends to have negative effects. When if you think porn's like no worries, I'll tell everyone about my habit, it's fine, no problems, I'm almost proud of it, then it doesn't really have any detriment.
I've had this conversation with someone before who was a heavy drinker, and the discussion was, what's the difference between a drunk and an alcoholic? A drunk is someone who is an alcoholic, as in they drink every day or whatever, way too much, but they don't care. They're proud of it. An alcoholic is someone who wants to stop being an alcoholic, but they can't. So it's the same. Yeah. And I think with porn, it's less severe because even if you are a drunk, you enjoy your drinking. It's objectively damaging your liver and other parts of your body. Porn, there's a debate that it's still harming, but I think we'd agree that it's less severe. You're probably not going to die of cirrhosis from porn.
Probably, yeah.
Yes, it could be warping your perspective on life.
Just change your brain.
It can be said by any topic or any life experience. Like most
be
people,
abused.
we're probably all battling something where we know we shouldn't be doing or we should be working
Sure.
on bettering ourselves, but it's like a crutch to us.
Yeah.
We're like, and you don't feel good about it afterwards.
Yeah. So, and I think, that's
So,
the problem. If you have those feelings, you probably want
Should
to.
be, yeah.
But
looking to stop.
if you're embracing it as the fellow that we are talking about embraces it, then go on your merry way. It's the same
as long as you're not,
and
as
as
you're
long as
not
you're
watching it in public, on
as
the
long-
train or something.
as long as you're still like a high functioning member of society, you're not out on the you do get those public masturbators. You read those stories about
disgusting.
so as long as you can still go to work or whatever you do, run your business, and
or not watch it at work. 'Cause
people probably do, right? I mean, you probably shouldn't do that, but in this modern sort of office lifestyle, I think there is a lot of dead time. You're either on Facebook or
You know if you have a problem, I think, personally. You
Yes.
don't need anyone to tell you.
You would
tell.
hope. You would
Yeah.
hope.
So I'm keen to give a review. I'm going for this whole year, no porn, basically. The first year ever since,
and you
I don't know,
and
13.
you going?
Still going strong.
Nice.
And it definitely I liken it to like Frodo in The Ring. Like it feels, it
I
felt
don't
like
watch,
that.
Sorry, I haven't seen it.
Anyone who's watched it,
plausible.
not possible. No, but it's like the pull of it. It's like if I've ever been addicted to anything in my life, it was porn.
Okay.
For me,
Have you?
Alcohol.
Because ask you though.
I last year was real rocky. Like I'm gonna quit.
Yeah.
Nah, and then I'm gonna quit this
I
time.
need to get to that
This
point
year.
with alcohol.
Personal thing though, like
Alcohol.
because you obviously you've got a partner.
Yeah.
Have you found
Have
like
you
it benefits?
choked
So have you have you found like a bit more beneficial like to your relationship, like
No.
by shying away from that has made you more intimate?
Nah, I could never discern any positive or negative effect on my life the whole time I was using it,
Okay.
and I haven't
yeah.
since. Still,
It's good that you can recognize that, because that's kind of like me. I think the same with porn. And I would say it is beneficial to me because I don't have a regular sexual partner. So I'd rather.
mine's hardly regular, boys. Might have to cut
Good
that
honesty. Good honesty.
Sorry, I don't know how to do that.
For me, sex is once a decade sort of thing.
Once a decade.
Well, you probably
when you
due,
put it that
probably
way.
due for the
Yeah.
next
When you
decade
put it
to
that
begin.
way.
Yeah.
It's funny. It's a funny way of putting it. We should wrap up. We should really.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, so for me, I think it doesn't add massive value to my life. There's certainly a feeling of, I like to reduce the amount, like keep it to once a week, or just when I get a massive urge, I just do it as that's a means to an end for me. It's not an everyday thing, and I do find that whether it be placebo or real, there is like a fatigue afterwards. So I do actually just generally reduce it until when I get a severe enough urge that I can't think of anything but to do that.
Yeah.
Which is probably about once a week, maybe once every 10 days, will vary. But one thing that I'm happy to say is I think with porn, I made this in the conversation earlier, where I think porn is more damaging rather than rape and sexual deviance is, like people either warped standards or as a crutch, they literally can't get a girlfriend even if they wanted to get a girlfriend, or actually maybe they just never try playing around with girls because they're just hooked on porn. I think that's more that incel.
We didn't even touch on that. That's
and it's where I'm happy to admit that porn has. I've said it before. Porn has for sure warped my standards. My standards for a female is I'm not even looking at a female unless she's
honest.
A minimum of a 7, but I'm realistically looking at 8s or 9s. And to be fair, if you look at my track record, not that I've ever had a real girlfriend, if you look at some of the girls that I've had,
Close relationship, intimate.
that I've had a play around with, they're all pretty.
Don't say it like that. Oh,
Crass. We're
that's
gentlemen
fine.
here.
Well,
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
yeah,
I know what you're saying.
I've had no issue with having very attractive women attracted to me. So
porn's been a benefit in that. That's,
Well, how long
I'm-
ago?
that doesn't get any talk about it.
As I say, I have other issues when it comes to romance, which maybe it's from porn, but I think it's other things. But I'm not saying that I have it all figured out. I certainly don't. But yes, for sure, porn has warped my standards. As I say, I'm not looking at a female unless she's.
That never gets mentioned as a possible pro for porn.
I was saying that that's arguably a negative because maybe if you aren't as don't.
Oh, I see what you mean.
No, you should not such an enigmatic person like myself who can pull a 9.
Right, I take it as like self.
But if you're well, yes. So
but
it can
maybe
go
it's not
both.
so
subjective though.
It can go both ways. But
So
maybe
they
if you're
might
like
be a 9 to you, but they might be a 6 to
well,
some.
yes. I mean, we can all agree on some general.
But I get what you're saying. Yeah, we get what you're saying.
But if you're a dude who cannot, you're a dirt bag, whatever. You're really an ugly dude, but you've got warped standards. Well, you're probably never even going to have a date with a hot girl, are you?
Unless you're wealthy.
Here you go. That's the other outlet.
There's stats to back that up.
Yeah.
There's not such an outrageous
Some
claim.
truth. Yeah.
Final thoughts, Nev?
Well, it's a personal thing, but I think it's a net negative. I think, I mean, as it gets talked about more, like I've seen more podcasts openly talk about it, and specifically about like the lack of testosterone in men, which we haven't really touched on that. Maybe we just
save that for another. Save that for
Yeah,
I
another.
just want to briefly. Well, that's it. I don't believe that it's like scientifically proven that ejaculation, whether it be sex or masturbation, reduces testosterone. But like we all recognize that when we're going through puberty, our testosterone is through the roof,
spikes.
and that's why we're so horny when we're teenage. And it sounds like you guys wake up morning wood. I don't wake up morning wood very often,
Yeah.
but that plays a part in that. You know where I was going with that is I'd love to try like a test, but it's real strict in New Zealand. In America, you can just get it as like a supplement, go to a testosterone clinic, but you can only get it if you have clinically low testosterone here.
Right.
So I'd love to just have that vigor that you had when you're a teenager to be a
Women
sex
can get
machine.
estrogen much easier than guys can get testosterone.
Should just be like
I looked into it.
should be regulated. You have to get a prescription, but it should be like
Should we be pioneering for more testosterone for men?
Possibly.
well,
Possibly it's too destabilizing societally to have all these guys roided up, king hitting people and
could be vice versa. Look,
I reckon save the testosterone
Yeah,
for
okay,
another.
cool.
That's
Okay.
cool. I
a
like that.
conversation on testosterone.
Yeah.
So I guess
Yep.
personal thoughts, net negative. I mean, I understand why people watch it, and who am I to judge? I have watched it in the past, but like for me now, being married and in a committing relationship, I find more joy. Like I don't have any regrets or anything. Like having sex with my wife, like it's enjoyable. People might look at it a different way. You're committed to one person, but
No, I think
they take
what
like
works for you.
yeah.
As
It's
long
like
as
it's like I guess when you contain it to like your own relationship, it's all personal to you, right? So if some people want to sleep around with whoever they want, that's their prerogative. I don't agree with it, but we're all human.
I think for me, my takeaway is whether it be a net negative or a net positive, it's very minor either way. I don't think it's having a drastic impact on society.
There's other issues.
Yeah,
that we
I'm
should focus
open-minded
on.
as to whether it's net negative or net. I say it's either here or there. It's very minor. And I think regardless of whether you've got a fulfilling sexual relationship with your girlfriend, wife, or you're a player, or you just watch lots of porn, as long as it's fulfilling to you, just there's no need for you to watch porn because you don't need to. You're satisfied with your sexual life. That's great. If you don't have a satisfying sex, I'd say I'm somewhat in that category. I'd say I'm not a huge porn watcher, but it's a means to an end. But that's enough for me. I'm satisfied. I don't have a great desire to go out and have sex at the moment. So as long as it works for you and you're not harming.
I can just imagine when I don't know. I was saying if a lot last week. When you have a partner, I just imagine like rabbits. Just it would completely like a switch would be flipped.
Maybe you'd say it's very hard to because
very
you never know
personal.
until
No
it
desire
actually
to like
happens.
full on desire. Like,
But at the moment, like I say, sexuality is just a means and end to me. It's a frustration of being a human. If I could be castrated, I wouldn't want to be castrated, but if I could shut off, I'm more focused on stop tracking. I don't care about sex.
Fair enough.
But I do get the pent up energy that has to be released. So.
what about you, Daniel? Last
Final
thoughts?
thoughts? Final thoughts. I think I said everything I need to say. I think, it's probably similar. I think it's probably personally more negative, and it's so sparse, and because everyone does it, it's like going to be forever impossible to kind of pull out with how detrimental it is. Fuck.
Well said.
I have nothing else crazy to say.
Sweet.
I think we covered a lot, but it's a massive topic. I'm curious. I like talking about it because I feel like in
It's a little
general it
too
hasn't talked
taboo.
about enough.
Yeah, taboo.
Serious,
Okay.
like almost seriously. Obviously, it's super funny. Like there's so much humor.
I think you kind of,
built
in
into
some
it.
ways, you need to like lighten it a little bit, so it's
I don't think
easier
you can
to
help
talk
it.
about.
It just seems like that just happens.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
like when, I don't know, you're in class when you're in high school or primary school and someone said like penis or something.
Yeah, it's just like
laughs.
inherently funny
Yeah.
for some reason, like farts.
Someone
are,
farts,
but,
yeah.
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 But
Oh.
it deserves to be talked about seriously because
Yeah.
it's
Well, maybe it's something we could look at talking about again in the future.
yeah,
Maybe
1
we
year.
could get-
I'll be keen on a
if-
year anniversary
Or I
of
was
my
going to
sobriety.
say, and he may not be keen if the subject, the sex machine that we're talking about, if he'd want to be a guest, that could be.
Oh yeah.
Possibly not. He might incriminate himself.
Well, if we're breaking the stigma.
No.
Yeah, well, we can put it out to him, and he may not feel comfortable, or he may, and it could
That's
be very
fair.
enlightening. That could be a.
We could get Lisa Ann on the pod.
Maybe.
All right,
No, we'll wrap it up there.
35.
It's another.
Well, yeah, and that's one.
Podcast
Sorry,
in
and
the
that's
book.
one other thing we didn't touch on is a lot of the common perception is that it's degrading to women, but I say it's equally, if not more, degrading to men because it's you can name off Lisa Ann, Mia Malkova, Devon Lee,
I don't know any of these women.
Amy
Lies.
Adams, Rachel Starr, Rachel Ross.
Dad.
Off the top of your head, like who's the biggest male porn star? Johnny Sins, and there's like J Mac, who's minor and compared to Johnny Sins is really the only major male player in the
Deserve
porn
more
industry.
respect.
So like the male, it's like a stallion horse. He's just there for boning and inseminating in some cases, and then that's it. His job's done.
Yeah, we didn't cover a lot.
He's
to be
just
honest.
he's the object in this,
Yeah.
in my opinion. The
We could do
woman
a-
gets all the stardom.
Yeah.
So
We could do a whole nother pod
Yes,
on
we could.
more
So-
still. Anyway,
you can
Yeah.
mull on that if you're listening.
mull on it.
Mull on it.
Mull over your own porn
No,
news.
well, let's
Reflect
wrap
on
it up there.
Yes, yeah.
Thanks for listening. Enjoyed
Thanks
your
for
company.
fapping.
Yeah. Well, drop us a like on YouTube or
And
Spotify.
Pornhub.
Yeah,
What
we're,
is Pornhub?
yeah, we're definitely not on Pornhub, but we're on Facebook, Instagram,
Yeah.
Twitter. So follow us there. If you've got any recommendations of any topics to talk about, drop them in the. You can write a question on Spotify, and we're happy to talk about it. Or if you've got any guests that we should talk with,
John Key.
yeah,
Beautiful.
let us know.
Yeah.
Catch you all later.
But yeah, peace out. Thanks for watching.
Later. Bye.